Hey creators, you're listening to episode number 8, and today is really very special because it's the first time I'm having a guest on the show. And not just that, we have a lot in common. We're named sisters. We'll probably chat about that later too. And we also have the same favorite music and artists we listen to when we work, and we are in the same mastermind group as well. I invited my special guest today to the show because she is an expert when it comes to website conversion. And just like any other creative, having a website is an integral part of our business. Is your website bringing in the sales or losing customers at first glance? And did you know that even some of the biggest brands get parts of their websites wrong and lose leads and sales? My guest today, Reese Spykerman, is here to change that. Reese is a website expert who has spent more than 15 years working with some of the greats in the online world like Bernadette Jiwa and Chris Gilbo. Today, she helps product-based businesses like Unicreamer quintuple their monthly revenue with website conversion optimization. Her clients love her straightforward style and empathic energy. After living in Malaysia for 7 years, Reese returned to her home of northern Michigan, where she lives with her husband and a 4-pound Morkie dog. She's a proud introvert, lover of pho soup, and is constantly playing a Spotify mix of Taylor Swift and Toto, which we both absolutely love. How cool is that? So, hey, Reese, and welcome to the Confident Creator Show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Mai. I'm so honored to be your first guest. Like, what a privilege. Thank you for having me.
I know. And you know how terrible all of these first has been really, really challenging for me. But I just want to, just like anybody else, I just want to jump in, show up, and just be me and see how it all goes.
Well, I think that's I would say one of the big secrets to your success is that you see something, and even if you've never done it before, you're like, well, I'm going to try that. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. Now, I mentioned earlier that we are named sisters, and probably our listeners are thinking about how are they named sisters? Would you care about sharing your story about your name? And then I'll share about my name after.
Yeah. So we both use, I can't even think of the word. Is it not a pseudonym? But anyway, both you and me don't use our full legal names with our promotion and our business. And my full name is Marisa. And way back in the day when I started my online business, like 15 years ago, I thought it would be an issue with people trying to remember how to spell it. Like, how do I get a domain name? How do I deal with the spelling of my name? So I went with a nickname that I'm often called by friends and family, Reese. And I decided, all right, well, that's the name I'm going to roll with professionally. So here we are.
Yeah. And in my case, it's a very interesting story. So the name that I have is something that my uncle has given me. And he was supposed to register it as Marlene because I have 2 grandmothers, both my father's side and my mother's side, who are both named Maria. So they just want me to be named Marlene so that, it's paying tribute to those 2 grandmothers. So when he went to the birth registry, he made the spelling wrong. So my first name is now spelled Myrlyn, which is pronounced Myrlyn, which is kind of a tongue twister thing. And my friends are having a difficult time pronouncing it, so they kind of named me Mai, especially when I started working. It's just so difficult for them to pronounce the name. And when I was starting out, I thought, I don't want to put my name out there, not because I don't like it, but because it's very difficult to pronounce. And a lot of people are going to, might get it wrong. Well, they still get my name wrong, but even though it's a lot easier to say Mai rather than Myrlyn, right? So that's it. And we are both we have these common, you are Marisa, I'm supposed to be Marlene, which was really interesting. That's why we decided to call us Name Sisters. So that is our short but interesting story.
I just think it makes us like celebrities, like,
Yeah.
there's singers like Queen Latifah or, who give themselves a different name. And that's kind of what you and I have done, and
Yes.
I too, my name was always pronounced wrong by people growing up. I would get called Marissa a lot. So it takes, like, same for you. It just takes that whole thing out of the equation. And people still pronounce your name wrong, but at least they probably do. It's probably easier than it would be if you had your real full name out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So enough with our chit chat. I want to go straight right in because I'm pretty sure our listeners are excited to what they're going to learn today. So I want to start with asking you, when did you start becoming a conversion strategist? Like, how did it all started for you?
Well, my story is that I come from a journalism background. So I went to school to learn to write and to be a journalist. And when I graduated, I wasn't too thrilled with going to work in the media. But what I started to do instead was design websites, because there was this part of me that really liked that creatively, right? I mean, there was the part of me that was really into the writing side of things, but there was the artistic side of me that wanted to go into design. And I took some additional courses in design, and I just started designing websites. And first it was for, solo people. We're talking way back, maybe about 15 years ago, during the heyday of blogging, when people were first starting to have personal blogs. So I did that, and it evolved. It became for small businesses and then for larger corporations. But I always still worked with entrepreneurs. And what happened is this. Over time, I noticed that making a design that looked pretty and attractive, it wasn't enough, right? And I started really learning about the fundamentals about a design needs to be intuitive for people, and it needs to be really obvious too for people to know where they go to contact you or what they click if they want to buy something. And a lot of times what would happen, both in my work and what I saw out in the world, is people would make things that look attractive, but they weren't selling because it wasn't really obvious to the person visiting the site where to go and how to get there. So I kind of, I just came into it over time. And I started working with some of these practices with my clients. And it really helped their websites, right? And they would notice things like, for example, they would notice that their email list would grow if we just made a few tweaks to the design that helped encourage email list signups, stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And now that you mentioned about creating pretty website designs. So I am a creative. Most of my audience are creatives. We are artists, and we are obsessed with anything pretty, even our websites. I know I used to do that because I used to design my website myself. And I design it in such a way that it looks pretty because I just like it to be pretty. But what I have observed over those years is that, yeah, people are coming to my website, but no, I'm not getting people to my list. And no, I'm not making any sales either. So that was kind of like, what was wrong? And I didn't know about website conversion at the time. And you said that even though you spent years as a designer, one of your big messages is pretty doesn't sell. Okay, can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
Yes. Yeah. So first, I want to say that I think all of us as human beings do what you just described. I mean, your audience is creatives, but we go to a website and it almost feels like we're opening up an issue of the Magnolia Journal, or it's beautiful. It feels like an online home we would love to call our own. And believe me, I have visited many sites like this where I'm like, oh, I just kind of covet that website because it's so pretty.
Yes.
And the thing is I'm not advocating that you need or want to be ugly to sell, but pretty alone will not sell for you. And I'm going to give you an example that I think your audience might relate to. there's a current trend in design right now. If you go to like a lot of these places that have Instagram feed templates or website templates, where especially for women, it's kind of this very neutral taupe palette, kind of light rose and white. And it's very calming and nice, right? And we all go and we're like, ah. And I've seen many gorgeous websites that do this, right? They look very on trend. They look really stylish. But here's the problem. They'll have like a contact me button or an add to cart button, and it's all in that same color palette, and it gets lost in the shuffle, right? So if one of the things that your audience might relate to is when you paint something, right? Like one of the principles we learn about, and I'm not a painter, so I'm probably going to not get this quite right, but when you compose a piece, you have to have parts in the piece that draw the eye, and you need to have things like enough contrast. Otherwise, it looks really flat and bland, right?
Yes.
So if we think about that similar with a website, if you use one of these beautiful themes or templates or color palettes and your add to cart button or your contact buttons are not popping, they do not like visually have enough contrast and boldness because you've prioritized pretty and elegant over having that pop, it's going to get lost in the shuffle. No one's eye is going to pick it up and they won't buy from you. I mean, some will, but you won't be getting nearly as many clicking on that as you could. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult because where can people find the buy button or the purchase button, right? So I think I also have the same kind of experience. But what you're talking about is we have to guide our website visitors on what they actually have to do on our website. Maybe it's signing up to your email list or buying your product or signing up for your services, right? Is that right? Did I get it right?
You did, yeah. So I'll give you an example of a client I worked with recently who we did a really quick, short engagement, right? I didn't do a whole fleshed out website redesign with her. I rarely do that anymore. But what I did is I consulted with her about, okay, what can we do to increase your email list signups? And on her homepage, she had a beautiful site and she had these red buttons. She had a red button for sign up for her email list. Then she had a red button for learn about her. She had a red button for maybe like her services page. And all these buttons, what happened is that particular style was used so frequently that nothing was standing out. Like they seemed to have equal weight. So what we did is I said, why don't we make the other things like the about you, the services page, and whatever the third one is, I can't remember. Let's just make those links. Let's not make them buttons. So go ahead and make them links and make them maybe black text. Or I told her you can keep the red as your color if you want. Let's just have one button on this page. And, she had this button a couple times on the page. But the one button was just for her email list sign up. And we made that button bigger and we made it round because everything else on the page was square, right? So that's like another tiny tweak to like give that visual difference. And she saw, get this, a month from the month prior to the month that we made those changes, she saw something like a 52% increase in her email list signups just from that change, like that, just that one page. So you can see how powerful this is.
Yeah, I know. I think, and having the same like colors and styles and buttons, especially on the website, is having like too many call to actions. I've heard you talk about that. And the funny thing is, before I met you inside of our shrimp club, I was actually redoing my website. And I was planning on creating something that was really pretty with what do you call that, a hamburger menu that will pull down, pull up, or whatever, and there will have the menu will be displayed when they click that. But when I met you, and I learned about your business, which is website conversion, I kind of like stalked you on the Instagram, on your website. I looked at how you are creating, what you are doing, and how you are presenting your website. So I was like, oh, I think I'm going to be doing something really, really wrong if I just listen to my pretty stuff. Like I want to have a website that is pretty. So after learning something from you, because in the club we are always sharing information, right? So I learned something super valuable from you. And what I did was, instead of having the hamburger menu, which is pretty common these days, and a lot of people are using it, I opted to have it simple and just deliver a primary navigation menu so that people are going to find it easier. Like, where do they need to go? I have a button that says get started, and then I just kept the sign up to my email list as the main thing that is going to be on my homepage. That is it. The rest are just smaller links and something that is not as highlighted as the signing up to the email list. And I also got like mine was more like 42% conversion, which was, oh my goodness. I added a new app and it was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to continue to do that. So I did that, and like I just launched it and it was pretty amazing. So thank you so much for that. That was a really awesome experience, and I owe that to you. So you guys, if you're listening and you haven't, if you have designed your website to be something that is pretty, like we're not advocating that it be ugly, right? But at least make it work for you. And now I have another question. Like, I have observed these kinds of things that a lot of people are doing. And we have also talked about this a lot of times. Like, there are biggest problems on people's website that sends people away or make the visitors leave a certain website. What do you think are the three biggest problems on a website that sends people away? And how can we fix them?
Such a good question. So the first one that I see so much all the time, like I will do presentations for groups and masterminds, and I ask the people who hold the presentation, can you get a few of your group members to please, if they want a before and after of their website, for me to do a little bit of that, to submit their website. And at least 50% of the time I see this. I saw it when I did it with your group. So it's this. It's
Yes.
so big. It's in the header of your website. So that's where like your logo and your navigation is. People put icons to the social media in there.
I know.
Okay?
Guilty.
And listen to this. I'm going to tell your audience why this is such a no-no. Mm-hmm. We're really impatient as people. And we also, I dare say, we might have as a culture and a society a little bit of an addiction problem to places like Facebook and Instagram, right? They hook us, they hit us, like they get our dopamine going. So someone lands on your website and they see the social media icons in the header and their mind is off to the races. They're like, oh my goodness, I wonder if Maria messaged me back on Facebook. I've been waiting to hear from her. Oh, I wonder if I got any new followers on Instagram, right? So even if it's at a really subconscious level, our brain starts thinking that, because that's what those platforms have trained us to do.
Exactly.
And we click the button and we leave your website. So we're sending them away. Like when you have your social media links in your header, and your header is one of the most important parts of your website. It's prime real estate. It's like a house on the water, right? And when you put social media icons there, that say goodbye to your traffic. They're going to leave. They're bouncing out.
Exactly. That is
so that was the first
I
one.
learned. Yeah, the hard way too. So let's move on to the second one.
Yep. So the second one is a little bit more challenging to explain, but we kind of talked about it a little bit. And it's this: you have too many calls to action. And a call to action is like an action you want people to take, like visit my products page or contact me, or or it might even be fill out this form. So the problem's this: when you have too many of them that are really in close visual proximity to one another, like as you're scrolling the page, one is, almost immediately following the other, and they all look almost equal in importance and in weight, people won't pick one or over the other because they're confused. They don't know what choice to make, right? You're not like telling them first go here, then go here. you're like giving them too many choices. And a lot of us, and I used to be this way, think that's a good thing to do. Like, I want to make sure people have all the options and all the choices. But actually, people do really well when we kind of hold their hand and we tell them exactly where we want them to go, rather than leave too much up to them, like too many choices. So they'll just choose neither. If these are too close together to each other and they both seem equally important, they'll just say, okay, I'm not going to choose either one. Like, not all the time, but a fair amount of people will just say, no, I'm confused, not going to do it. So that was number 2. Like, you have competing calls to action that are in close proximity to one another. That sends people away.
All right. So that is interesting. It's like shopping, right? When you're presented with so many different things, you'll just, no, I'm confused. I don't know what to get. So I'm not going to pick one.
Yeah, that's such a great real life example of that. Yes, exactly.
Happens a lot of times. So
yeah. Maybe better for our wallet, right?
It is better for the wallet. But that's also the reason why, when we give an experience to our website, like every visit to our website is a different experience for the visitor, our audience. And when we have these many options, it's either like, what am I going to do here? So that kind of confusion is really what makes them leave, right? And from that, you lose sales instead of you guiding them towards maybe your work with me page or your program page or your shop page. You just lost them like immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So what is the number 3?
The number 3 is a big one. Ooh, my goodness. Your website is loading too slowly.
Oh, yeah. All right. You go ahead. But I have a good story to share with you later.
Well, we might talk about this later, but I'll just talk about it now. So Google, way back in the day in 2016, might as well be a decade, did studies that show that more than half of the people who visit your website on their phone will leave if it takes longer than 3 seconds to load.
Yes.
And, I see a lot of times when I'm doing website reviews and audits, or I do a VIP intensive day with a client, I see websites with load times of like 9 seconds, 15 seconds, sometimes even more. And people just do not have patience. And they're, why don't you tell me your story? And then I'll tell your audience a couple of things that they can look at maybe changing to help bring down or improve that speed.
Yeah. So I was visiting a website, which is a friend's website, actually. But then I was about to look for something and I got invited to join in a program. But when I checked and, launched I'm just in the homepage, it's taken so long. Like, it's been a minute before all of the images have shown up. I don't know where am I going. Like, I have the links, but I'm not seeing anything except for the text, and a few buttons are even not loading. So my immediate reaction was close the page because it's not going to take me anywhere. Yeah, right. So I think why do you think a website speed is so important to making sales? And maybe if you can give us examples of things that slows down a website, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's what you just said. You and all of us, we get to a site and we're impatient, right? Mm-hmm. And we're all really busy people. And I do think that technology has made us even more impatient, right? We want stuff now. And so when a website's loading too slowly, a couple things happen. First, we get frustrated because we're impatient. And I think that sometimes we might even silently judge that website, like in terms of our trustworthiness for it and its professionalism. We're going to think something's wrong because think about it. When other things related to technology go slowly, like let's say you're on your computer and it's crashed, and it's taking forever for it to reload, it's really frustrating. So we have that memory in our minds of that frustration. And then we begin to associate that memory with things like your website. Like this is all really at a subconscious, almost intuitive level, right? And here's the big thing though. I think people can really understand this. Most of us think that people are willing to wait around because our stuff is amazing, but they aren't. I mean, there's a couple exceptions to that rule. We're talking really famous people. If Oprah has a long loading website, we'll probably wait for her, but she doesn't. But for the rest of us mere mortals, we don't think your stuff is really that good that we're willing to wait around for that much of our life for it to load. And what will happen is, let's say we're going to a site where you sell things. Well, we might go to Amazon instead. You know why?
I know.
Because it's predictable. It's like, look, I just want to buy, my body spray. I'm going to Amazon because I know I can get it done. And whether, say what you want about Amazon, we know that the experience they deliver us is really predictable. So when you have a slow website, you're creating all this doubt in people's minds. And let me tell your audience a couple things that they can look at that are like big speed issues that can create issues.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So the first one is you have big images that have not been optimized. And there's a couple different things that you want to do to optimize your images. And one of them is like, let's say you have a mobile version of your site. And it kind of varies, but let's say most mobile screens, it depends, are not going to be really physically bigger than like 500 pixels. I mean, again, there's variation here, but let's just roll with that. And you have someone serving up a desktop version of an image that's like 1800 pixels wide and it's like being just forced into a small size. Well, no one on mobile needs to see like the visually looking different version of your 1800 pixel image. Instead, you should make it, like an actual sized one, like more similar to the size that they're viewing at. So that's one way, is your size, like the actual physical dimensions of your image. But the other way you want to optimize is you want to compress your images. And if you Google search online image compression, there's all kinds of free tools that can help you with this. But, that alone, I've seen people's website speeds go from 10 seconds to like 5 or 6 seconds just from addressing their images. And that's a pretty big improvement. And the other one is some people think it's cool to put a video background like on, say, the top area of their website. It's kind of like that pretty thing we were talking about.
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness. Those are huge. It's really hard to get most video down to a small enough size where it isn't impacting your speed. So I think you really want to ask, is it worth it? Is it worth it that this video might really screw up the load time of my site? Like, do I think the video is that valuable that it's worth that cost? So that's another one related to images. But the other biggie is scripts and plugins. Like people who, especially who are on WordPress, they'll start with all these helper plugins. And before you know it, they've got 45 of them on their site. And all of these plugins have their own set of files that they need to go like collect and gather. So look at it like this. Imagine like you have a home that's a minimalist home. And so when you go to clean it, all you have to do is put away a couple things and your cleaning's done. But then imagine a home where like a person is a hobby enthusiast and they've got stuff thrown out all over and it's like 5 times the amount because there's all these extra things that they have to put away. Well, plugin files are kind of like that. It's like all these extra files that the browser has to go and collect and gather, and you're just increasing the amount of work that the browser has to do, and that increases your page load time.
Yeah, that is interesting. I always knew about the videos and the images, like the resolution. So the only thing that I do is, instead of having uploaded a 300 dpi image, I will reduce it to either 120 or 72 dpi and I'll be good. But this is the first time I heard about the plugins, and I have been a WordPress baby since blogging started way back, I don't know, early 2000 or 1900, but yeah, whatever. And and I have used a lot of plugins, but I have never really paid attention to that. So that is probably one of the reasons why during that time. Now I am not in WordPress right now, so I'm using a different platform. But I think at the time I was having an issue with why isn't my page loading faster than I want it to be. And I was a plugin hoarder. I want this plugin. This is a pretty plugin. I want to use this. I want to use that. So because plugins were quite new and we all wanted to use like all of them as long as, this is going to be helpful for the website. They say it will be. So I'm going to use it. But now, yeah, it's something new. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that many of our listeners are also thinking about that. Like, I didn't know about that. So hopefully some people out there are also not aware that plugins are affecting. So if you are on WordPress, you guys, you might as well look out for those plugins that you're not actually using and maybe delete them, right?
Yeah. And it's, I get it. A lot of times if we're DIYing our websites, plugins help us. They help make it easier, especially if you don't know code. So I don't want to shame people about this. I understand why they use plugins. And frankly, in some of my client work, I rely on them. But I, these days, try to ask the question of, all right, well, like do a cost benefit analysis of this plugin. What is it getting me? What's it costing me? Is it worth that cost? And sometimes it is. Yeah. There's a plugin, believe it or not, that I can recommend. And I can't remember if it's a premium plugin. I think it might be. And it's called Perf Matters. So PERF, MATTERF, and MATTERS. Perf Matters. And what it lets you do is it lets you shut off certain scripts and plugins on a per page basis. So let's say that on your homepage you need to run something. You need a plugin and you got it mainly for something on your homepage. Well, what you could do is make it so that that plugin only runs on that page and it's shut off on all the other ones. So it gives you that kind of control over your plugins. And I really like to use that one. It does help lean things down a bit.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. It's the first time I heard about that plugin. So I am in Showit platform. So my website is running in Showit, but my blog is still in WordPress, but it's running under Showit. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's just the blog. I do not want to maintain another WordPress website, but since Showit is helping me with that, so it's kind of like Showit plus WordPress kind of thing. So I still do use a couple of plugins these days. And the most helpful one for me are the tasty pins, which I use for my Pinterest game. And then, of course, the new one that I found is the Buzzsprout plugin, which helps me to automatically embed the podcast episodes every single week. So those are the most helpful ones. Plus, of course, the one that filters the spam, Akismet.
Oh, yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. One. We all need that.
We all need that. If you don't have Akismet in your WordPress, oh my goodness, you guys need that.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. All right. So this was a very interesting conversation. We have talked about a lot about a website, but would you mind if I ask you something really like I am trying to help our listeners build confidence as creators so they can also start building their own business and start showing up and start creating their artwork and start selling it, things like that. And this one is, I think, something that a lot of our listeners are introverts, right? Most of artists are introverts. So do you think that introverts and empaths make some of the best marketers, or can you probably tell our audience more about that and how, because I know you are an introvert, and how being an introvert has actually influenced your work and your career?
Yeah, I can do that. So I think any introvert listening to this can relate to the fact that despite the fact that I'm talking a lot on this particular podcast, most of us who are introverts tend to be big listeners. We'll sit back and observe more, right? Rather than engage, because engagement tends to sometimes be a bit overstimulating for us after a while. But if we sit back and we just kind of watch the world and people watch, we don't get as worn out, right? That's kind of our natural habitat as introverts. And what I think that translates to is, because introverts are really great observers of people, we understand what makes them tick, right?
Oh.
Like, we can understand our audience and our market more deeply. Like, especially, I think a lot of people listening to this may not have realized that, but I hope it kind of flips a switch in their mind that, hey, they actually have this superpower if they just turn it on. And it's like, put those listening and observation skills to work, and then ask like questions, like not necessarily directly of people, but ask yourself, why do I think she's doing this? Why did that person pick this thing, right? And you can start to learn a lot about behaviors, human behavior, consumer behavior. And from that, I mean, when you really understand people at that fundamental level, you can speak to them in a language that says to them, she gets me, right? And so it can inform your copywriting, right? And so I think if there's people in your audience who are listening and they think, well, for example, I'm an introvert, but I'm a terrible copywriter, or I don't know how to communicate with people, I would challenge anyone who thinks that, and to say, actually, you just need to unlock it inside of you and look at everything you've known and observed about people throughout your life, and then reflect back to them what you see about them. Because I think the really most powerful marketing is when we put out either it's copy or communication or design that says to that other person, she really understands and gets me. Because when people feel seen, they feel they trust us, and then they want to buy from us, or they want to learn from us. Like if we're a teacher, right? They want to be in our orbit. So that's why I think introverts, especially if they understand how to unlock this power, are really amazing marketers. And that's what has helped my career. Yeah.
Yeah, really wow. Because I am the exact opposite. Now, in this type of thing, we are the exact opposite. I don't know if I am an extrovert. I just love staying at home. But I also love interacting with people. And I love asking them what your struggles are. What are your challenges? What are your, what do you do? So I love asking. That's how I learn about my audience. And that's how I am able to communicate with them. But those who are not familiar about asking, or not really sure whether they should ask their audience or not, or whether how can they communicate better with their audience, maybe they could use your tip to just listen to what they're asking. What are they always talking? What are they commenting or asking in other people's profiles? Like, I have been teaching this exactly to all of my students, or all my coaching students specifically. Like, if you want to build that connection with your audience, the first thing that you have to do is listen. And that is interesting that you said that introverts have superpowers, because you just observe and you listen. And I think that is going to be really, really very powerful for my audience. So, oh my goodness, it's been an amazing episode. Oh my God, I learned so much today, Reese. And it's not just that. I learned a lot of you already inside the mastermind, and I'm still learning a lot from you today. So I hope our audience learned every information that you have shared in this episode too. And I would like to thank you for being here with us today. I appreciate your time. And I know you guys, I'm sharing this now because we're done. We did like several takes of this episode because I messed up the first time. And the first time was I forgot to record. The second time was, oops, I forgot to record again. And the third time was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to stop and re-record everything. So I don't know. This was the first guest episode, which I am not familiar with on how to do. I just showed up here. Reese showed up. And I appreciate her patience with me and being a supportive friend. So thank you so much for being with us today. So one last thing, do you have any like final words of advice to our listeners today?
Well, if it's okay with you, Mai, I have a gift for your listeners that I think might help them. And it's related to what we just talked about in a way.
Of course, we appreciate any gift that you can share with us.
All right. So you can dive deeper into some of this stuff if you go to designbyreese.com/secrets, you can download my guide and checklist. It's free for 3 secrets to turn your website into a magical selling machine. But one of the things it helps you do is ask the question, why? And, when you go get this checklist, you'll get what I mean. But it really helps like improve your discernment skills, and it helps you make a decision on your website. Keep it or dump it. Yes or no. So it's going to help them with that. And so if I were to, pass on a word of advice, it's related to that gift, but it's this. Any choice you make when it comes to your website and even your marketing in general, I think it's really good to ask yourself why. Like, why am I doing this? And to dig a little deeper, and maybe don't go with that first answer. If your first answer is because I think it looks good, well, why? And then maybe your other question is like, well, does that help people? Right? So those are a couple questions you can ask. And I think anytime you make a decision with your website or your marketing or your business, asking those questions helps you make more empowered decisions that relate to your audience a bit more. So I hope that was valuable. And I think you did a fantastic job in this interview, Mai. And I love talking with you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, and I appreciate it. And once again, everybody, designbyreese.com/secrets, and you'll get the special gift that Reese has prepared for us today. Thank you so much again, Reese, and I'll see you soon. I hope you loved today's episode. I know I learned a ton, and I hope you did too. So once again, all the links are going to be in the show notes. Just go to mydeleon.com/CCS8. And if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll get notified of the juicy episodes coming out every single week. And while you're there, I would love it if you can leave us a review, because your ratings and your reviews help the podcast get found by other creatives. And as always, stay confident and keep creating. Until next time, this is Mai.